I was testing out Apple's Final Cut Pro as part of the new Apple Creator Studio. And something happened, something came up, and this got me thinking about something very important. So, as filmmakers, we tend to get excited on editing software, new editing software, like Apple Final Cut Pro in this case. That's what I was so curious to try out, the new Apple Final Cut Pro as part of the new Apple Creator Studio. And I installed it, even though lately I've been working on DaVinci a lot. I installed it and decided to test it out and to try it out. And I was editing on it, I was enjoying the experience, how fast the software is, how cool it is, especially on that same week I got to know that Apple bought Motion VFX, which is a great plugin software, and now I'm sure they're gonna do great things together. And this gave me the confidence also that Apple is taking this seriously, and yeah, I was excited. I started editing this particular project again on Final Cut Pro. Was happy doing so, I was convincing myself that I shall not abandon the software until the software shut down. I didn't have the rainbow orange and colored thing of Mac. So Final Cut quit, I reopened, everything was saved, thankfully. But after a while I zoomed out and it quit again. Then I reopened, I tried to find the problem, but as I was trying to zoom out on the timeline and check if there's a particular problematic clip, it quit again. And then after I tried restarting everything, and maybe who knows, did a 10-minute edit, I think. I'm quite fast with editing on Final Cut Pro because I have been editing on Final Cut since 2010 now. And I managed to edit for 10 minutes, but suddenly it did it again. So this must be some kind of bug that Final Cut has at the moment. I'm sure they'll solve it, I hope they will solve it, but in my case, that happened for some reason or another. It might be not the case with you, but in my case it happened. And this got me thinking about something, because what happened is, when I reopened the program, I realized that I lost 10 minutes of editing, and I wasn't happy, especially now that I'm a father with very limited time, so I want to make the most out of my time here, and 10 minutes of editing is a lot of time when it comes to all this, So it got me thinking on how important it is to know more than one editing software. I really want you to inspire yourself to go out there and learn another software, unless you know already. That's what I want you to get out of this video. Why is it important to know two different kinds of software? First of all, as I told you, I edit on Final Cut. I edit on DaVinci nowadays, but through this whole Apple Studio thing, Apple Creative Studio thing, I decided to go back to Final Cut and switch and go back and forth between them. Because, by the way, the perfect software doesn't exist. Like cameras, the perfect camera doesn't exist. There are a lot of good cameras out there. Hamoudi is filming with the Sony here at the moment. I am testing out and I'm filming with the Nikon ZR, but they are great, they are both great cameras, but the perfect camera isn't out there. And same when it comes to editing. So even though I wish I just learn one software and that's it, and I focus on it and specialize in it, but the truth at the moment, my truth is that I have to jump back and forth between Final Cut and DaVinci. Because now that I try DaVinci, I know that it has some particular strengths, and obviously Final Cut, I know what its strengths are. And by the way, you can watch a particular video I did on the strengths of both Final Cut and DaVinci if you want to watch that. I suggest you do so, just to have an idea of where they shine. I find myself frequently jumping on and off from one software to the other nowadays. Some projects I finished on Final Cut, some projects I start and finish on DaVinci, some project I do the edit on Final Cut, but then do the color grading on DaVinci, because now that I have color graded on DaVinci, I find it so difficult to abandon it, So yeah, and one last thing before I continue with this With this main point today that you must know two editing software, I must say that DaVinci is that kind of software that inspires you to create great things. So I would suggest DaVinci to be one of the two software to test out. Final Cut, super awesome also. But yeah, as I said, watch that video that I had made before to get to know the strengths of both. But why is it important to know two software? First of all, it is a great idea to have the best out of both worlds. Okay, so since they both do things differently, kind of thing, and they both have different power, different strengths, it's great to, why not, edit on Final Cut and finish an edit on DaVinci, or vice versa, or use the AI tools that DaVinci has, but use the speed of editing in Final Cut. So you might want to consider that for this particular purpose, to have the best out of both worlds. However, I realize that it can be a bit annoying, especially if you have OCD and you want to just start a project on a software and finish it there, you know. But another good reason would be that it's always good to have a backup, guys. If shit hits the fan on one project, on one software, at least you have another editing software which you know, which you're already comfortable with, and which you're ready to jump in.
DaVinci quit now. I promise you, it's been a while since this happened, but now DaVinci quit, so probably I'm dealing with some heavy footage here. Or else I'm asking too much of the software, you know, I'm going... But yeah.
Worst case scenario, let's just imagine that one software is discontinued. At least you don't need to start from scratch learning an editing software, you know, from scratch again. Because imagine you have clients to work for and you need to deliver on their deadlines, or maybe you have personal projects, whatever the case is. You want your filmmaking career to be as smooth as possible and to keep on progressing. So literally putting a stop because you know one editing software isn't ideal. Now, to be fair, once you know how to edit on one software, you'll get the gist and it won't be really difficult to jump into another software, you know. But my point here is, why not practice on two editing software like Final Cut and DaVinci? Now, I mentioned Final Cut and DaVinci, but in my case I know 4 editing software, but that's not the point. But my point is that if I have to jump on Premiere, I can do that. If I have to jump on Avid nowadays, no, I can't really do that. I used to edit on Avid, if you've ever heard of that. Avid is a software that I learned when I was working as a full-timer way back then with my first ever job when it comes to filmmaking. It was called Where's Everybody? Good Times here in Malta. And yeah, I learned Avid thanks to them. And it's the software that Hollywood and these kind of, you know, professional level people use. So if you want to learn it, go for it. It's an amazing software. However, it's quite difficult. It's quite different also. Premiere, quite an industry standard also. But if you aim to work as a solo filmmaker or in an independent studio, like we are here at Video Cafe, I believe that DaVinci would be the perfect fit, and Final Cut Pro, if you have a Mac, if you work in a Mac system, I would definitely suggest it too, because it's a great software. But yeah, you can do different combinations, you know, you can decide to go Premiere and DaVinci, or Final Cut and Premiere, who knows. Yeah, quite a lot of information, quite a lot of things that I've talked about today, but again, what I want you to get away today with is this. Learn 2 editing software, not 1. Then fine, it's good if you focus on 1, but make sure that you're practicing on the other every now and then. That's it.